Hello, today we're working with the TMP36 temperature sensor. I just have a circuit here so that when this temperature sensor is above 75 degrees Fahrenheit, this LED will then turn on. Everywhere there's a green wire is ground. Everywhere there is a yellow wire, there is a power source. And then I have this orange wire here coming from analog A0 input going to our signal on our temperature sensor. And then we have a digital output on pin 8 using this 220 ohm resistor going to our LED here using this jumper. You can take a look at the code here. I have in my comments that our LED is right here. It's going to be an output. We labeled it 8. And then we have our temperature pin at A0. We're going to be using this if statement here. If degrees Fahrenheit is more than 75 degrees, then we'll digital write to LED pin to make it high. Everything else we'll digital write to LED pin for it to be low. Now I'll drag the serial monitor up here. You can see we're at roughly 73 degrees room temperature. And I'll just give it a little bit. Get above 75. There we go. Look here, we're above 75 degrees Fahrenheit, so the LED is active. We're slowly falling below 75 again. Now the LED is deactivated. On. And back off again. Moving on to objective number 2, where we have now added a push button and an RGB LED to our circuit. We're going to be using pins number 9, 10, and 11 on the digital side here for our RGB LED. We have these 3 orange wires, which are coming directly into the board, and then 2 20 ohm resistors that are going to be heading into the LED. On the long prong there, we have the ground wire, which is going back to where we got our original source of ground. See here, ground and 5 volts going directly into our breadboard. Follow it down. There we're grabbing the ground, going back to the LED. The temperature sensor connections are the same as the previous exercise, where we have the 5 volts coming in, the ground going back out, and then we have our signal wire here in the middle, which is going to be our A0 over here on the analog bar. Now for the push button, we have power coming in. We have a 220 ohm resistor taking it back to ground. And we have this red wire here where we're pulling a signal off of the push button here going into pin number 7. So we have 1 digital input, 3 digital outputs, and 1 analog input. Yeah, right here. Okay, so if we hit the button here, we can see we get an update on our temperature. Attempting to cool down our temperature sensor using this ice cube here. And looking at the serial monitor, we are at 53 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's get an update when I hit the button. 51. So we're still slowly dropping. This light is still yellow. Oh, okay, we're starting to switch. There we go. There we go. Okay, so we're at around 48, 49. Our LED is a nice cyan blue. Now we're gonna take this off. And look at that. We jump very quickly back to yellow. Live update says 55 degrees Fahrenheit now. And we are shooting back up. LED is yellow between 50 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. The temperature sensor up to a very decent range here. I did just have it very high 70s, then we are kind of hiccuping in between 79 and 80. My fingers were a little cold, but now I think I can really get it up into that red light zone. I'm holding it here. There we are. Now we're going into the higher 80s. This LED is now very bright red. Looks like the temperature had just dropped. Yes, it has. What are we at? Now we're down to 79. So we can see we went back to a yellow. Just to get a quick overview of the code, we have our pins all here declared in the scope. We had temperature sensor at A0. Then we had our green, blue, and red of the RGB listed as 9, 10, and 11 for digital outputs. Our digital input was the push button, which I labeled PB on pin number 7. In our setup here, we have our 3 outputs and our input. Our outputs are going to be the blue, green, and red pins, and our input is going to be the push button. In our loop here, since we wanted to use the signal from the push button to later control the serial monitor, we have a button state, which was a digital read of that push button so we could tell whenever it was pressed. Our float of the voltage degrees Celsius and degrees Fahrenheit was something we used in the previous objective, where we just wanted to be able to read the voltage from the temperature pin in terms of degrees Celsius and degrees Fahrenheit. Degrees Fahrenheit is ultimately what was displayed in the serial monitor. Next is our if statements. The if statements are what actually guided the behavior of the LEDs to change while we were manually changing the temperature via cold element and body temperature. So for the first one, we had anything below 50 degrees here. We would have the blue and green pin go high to give us that nice cyan color that we saw. The next if statement was everything in between 50 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. We would see the green and red pin go high so that we could get that yellow color, which was like a median. And then for the final one, we had anything above 80 degrees Fahrenheit would just make the red pin high. Our last if statement was only for the button state. It was so that we could control our serial monitor. Whenever the button was pressed, it would show the value of Fahrenheit degrees. We just have whenever button state is high, we would serial print the temperature as well as the degrees value.